although I was a talented netballer, you absolutely needed a career, and I mean a career outside of sport, performance, playing. So even when I was at university, there was never a kind of notion that you were going to be a professional netballer. So,
because I guess this was before, was it the Super League? Was Super League?
It was right at the advent of Super League. So, very much the start. And so everyone, you'd get some funding from sort of world-class performance if you're in the England setup, but it wasn't enough to, at that point to supplement a full-time career. So all the girls that I knew had aspirations to go into some sort of employment, afterwards. So it's very much a kind of thing around university being a route to further my netball, because I wanted to go to Loughborough and I knew that was a really good sporting university, but also the fact that I knew I needed a career.
From Coordinate Sports, it's The Drive Phase, a show about sports founders, leaders and experts and the stories behind their business journeys. Our guest this episode is Laura Cordingley, CEO of Chance to Shine. From a young age, Laura developed an interest in netball, through which she discovered a passion for sport that became an enduring part of her experience and career. Laura became CEO of Chance to Shine in 2018, the charity devoted to inspiring and delivering cricket-based development programs, reaching more than 6 million children in state schools nationwide since 2005. During the episode, we discuss her understanding of the cricket from a developmental perspective and challenges Chance to Shine experienced during the pandemic. Enjoy the show. Okay, so I'm delighted to welcome Laura Cordingley to the show today. She is CEO of Chance to Shine. Chance to Shine is the national charity devoted to inspiring and educating children in and through cricket. 6 million children in over 16,000 state schools have benefited from over 200 community projects since 2005. Looking forward to hearing all about that. So welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you, James. Thank you for having me.
Cheers. Yeah, and we just mentioned then off recording that I had to update my intro with you just passing the 6 million mark. I did have it down as 5 million children. So yeah, congratulations on that one.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really proud moment for the charity. I think one of the things we're always really conscious of is our numbers are quite large, which is great. Back when Chance to Shine started in 2005, we were supporting nowhere near that number of young people, and now it's about 500,000 a year, notwithstanding obviously the last 2 years of COVID. But it's really important to us that actually, whilst our scale is large, it's the impact that we have on young people that's the most important thing. So actually, we want to make sure that every single young person, every one of those 500,000, have a really positive, most importantly, fun experience, actually, because that's the reason that they keep coming back and they like sport. And then secondly, that they get to develop life skills through it, confidence, resilience, teamwork, friendship, and all those things that, all of us that love sport know you kind of inherently get, but actually trying to create environments where the young people can really maximize that is really important for us.
Definitely. And also good before we I know look at some of the stats as well. Your kind of participation stats, especially for girls, are amazing as well. So I know we'll get into all that. But where we normally start is basically introducing you to the listeners, really. So going back a little bit and letting them learn a little bit more about you. So you went back to kind of childhood. You grew up in, was it Northeast Durham?
Yeah, in Durham. Yeah, just a little village outside.
Yeah, and how would you describe your childhood back then in terms of, I guess obviously from a sporting context, but I guess in general, what was it like?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I consider myself one of those lucky people because I really did get into sport by accident in some respects. So I'm the eldest of 3 daughters, and I'm a total giant, and I was a total giant at like 7. And so I think I stood out to people that kind of had an eye for sport, and I was really lucky. So in my village primary school, the school secretary was a netball coach, and her daughter played in a team in Sunderland, which is about half an hour drive from where we live, because they were massive Sunderland football fans and their whole family were there. So they had a massive Sunderland affinity. And she basically took me to side in school when I was 7 one day and said, Laura, you should really come to netball practice and join the netball team. And I did. And I loved it. And it's funny, I remember the very first match, I didn't get on and I was like sub. And I remember going up to her, tap her on the shoulder, and I was like, June, will I get on? And she's like, no, Laura, but maybe next time if you try hard and practice. And I thought, okay, I just really want to play on my primary school netball court.
Well, for me, that's good lessons learned, I guess, in terms of not getting on, even in terms of primary and learning that I've got to wait your turn and try hard and practice.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I probably realised it at the time. I was definitely one of those kids where I always wanted to play outside. I had a lot of energy. And if you gave me a ball, I'd throw it against the wall and just play catch quite happily. I was that kid. And so I guess you could say I always had a propensity towards sport, but my parents were sporty per se. It wasn't a sporty family. So if June, the secretary hadn't taken me to one side at that point, would I have got into netball? Who knows? But for me, I just did it and I loved it. And, I didn't really look back.
Yeah, and I guess once you're into it as well, I suppose at a certain level, did it kind of escalate quite quickly? Obviously, talking about really local level to start with, but for you, it seems like you'd have been spotted if you're really tall, talented. Was there kind of a clear pathway at that stage?
Again, it's one of those things where I still put it down to luck to a certain degree. So I played for my primary school, and then that same school secretary suggested to my mum that she took me to the club in Sunderland for trials. And again, it's really funny. I remember going along, and so at that point, I was like last year primary school. So I've been playing in the school team for like 3 years, and I went along, and you had to go to trials, and they said, "What position are you?" And I looked. It was the first time I'd ever seen other fellow giants along. In my little village, I was by miles.
I'm not really the tall one, so I'll just.
Oh no, I was like taller than my primary school teachers, and there was these other girls, and at that point, I was a shooter in netball, and I was like, I saw one of these girls shooting. I said, "I'm going to trial as a defender," and she looked at me like I was absolutely bonkers, but I was like, there's no tall defenders I can see. All the tall people are shooters. So I trialed as a goalkeeper, and I got into the team as a goalkeeper, having only ever played goal attack and goal shooter for my school. But that club was a really amazing club. And again, we were fortunate because we had 2 cars. My dad had a company car with work because he drove loads. So we had a family car, and it was a really rusty, hilarious thing. My mum would put her own seatbelt in. But she used to drive me to Sunderland, and that club played tournaments all around the country. So from the age of like 11, on weekends, my parents would drop me off at a bus stop in Sunderland, give me like £1 for the payphone, obviously back in the day. Yeah. I'd go to Bournemouth, I'd go to Manchester, I'd go to Southampton, we'd go to Croydon for netball tournaments. And I'd be like, I'll be back on Sunday. And we'd stop at a service station halfway up the A1 and be like, Mum, Dad, I'll be home in an hour. Can we get me from the bus stop? And that at a young age gave me really good experience to other people playing netball at a good level. And I think, I really credit that for helping me raise my standard, the club, all the volunteers that took us, going thousands of miles in my life.
So Sunderland to Bournemouth was the...
we'd go all over the shop. And from there, I got scouted. So when I was about 16, there was England scouts that used to come to the tournament, and I got selected to go for trials for the under-21s. And that was kind of my start of my netballing journey, I guess, as such.
Yeah, and I guess running alongside that, I mean, those experiences definitely would be building life skills as well, right? I'm going to talk about it with Chance to Shine, but that jumping on I don't know whether kids get that experience now, or like just with the money for the payphone and kind of independence until they have a chance to reach out to the parents. So yeah,
definitely. And I think, the things that I learned out, you came across people from all different walks of life as well, and it's funny because girls that you'd see the same sort of girls from around the country at different tournaments. I mean, you'd play against them and you'd be like, they're really good. And you see the girls from London and be like, they're really cool, in comparison to us from the Northeast. And it definitely gave you a sense of, I guess, camaraderie, but also kind of just that resilience, because some tournaments we'd do really well and other tournaments we wouldn't. And the nature of tournament netball was you'd lose matches, but then you'd have to bring yourself back within 10 minutes to play another team and things like that. So I think it definitely gave you the sense that there was always the chance of winning, but you had to try your best and work really hard at it.
Yeah, and you got that time for reflection on the bus back up to Sunderland as well.
Yeah, that and a lot of bingo.
No, so I was saying everything's going well with netball at this stage, obviously progressing really well and successfully, but running alongside that, what was it like academically? You went on to university and things. Was that did you have a focus on your academics and getting into uni? Was that always the focus at that time?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny, actually. I mean, I was fairly academic. So, I like to study. And what I kind of just always assumed I would go to university, but maybe because I loved sports, I wanted to do sport at uni. And that was kind of the thing. And I think the other point is, although I was a talented netballer, you absolutely needed a career, and I mean a career outside of sport, performance, playing. And so even when I was at university, there was never a kind of notion that you were going to be a professional netballer. So,
because I guess this was before, was it the Super League? Was the Super League? It was
right at the advent of Super League. So, very much the start. And so everyone, you'd get some funding from sort of world-class performance if you're in the England setup, but it wasn't enough to, at that point to supplement a full-time career. So all the girls that I knew had aspirations to go into some sort of employment. afterwards. So it's very much a kind of thing around university being a route to further my netball, because I wanted to go to Loughborough and I knew that was a really good sporting university, but also the fact that I knew I needed a career. So, keeping that in the back of your mind.
I guess that experience at Loughborough must have been amazing for you, with kind of the mix of, like you said, the academics, sport, the life around it. When you, obviously working through that, when you were graduating from Loughborough, what was the kind of mindset at that stage? Do you think, right, well, you always wanted to do sport at uni, and did you see the career path in front of you, or was it kind of, you tried to work it out as you went?
Yeah, to be honest, no. So literally, like, straight after uni, my priority was I needed to stay physically in Loughborough to play netball, but I didn't have a job. So I took two jobs. I took a job at a bar, and I took a job at a telesales mobile phone company, because I was just like, my priority was I need to stay to play. So I was doing two jobs at once at that point. And then when I got the telesales, I got more hours, so I dropped the bar job. And I thought, I'll find something.
So that was just working around financing your sport, basically, so you could.
Yeah, it was basically living in Loughborough to continue to play. And then, as it happens, a job came up in the England Netball East Midlands regional office as sort of a regional coordinator. So very kind of, I guess, admin, sort of very, very junior role. And I interviewed for that, and I got that. I think that was about maybe 12 to 18 months after I'd left university or something. So I'd worked in the bar and the telesales for a while. I mean, and to be honest, the telesales thing really helped, because I used to hate phone calls and I used to hate speaking to people I didn't know. So actually, it kind of really made you have to do things that you...
No, it is a grounding, isn't it? Maybe you should bring it into schools and make you make some cold calls to someone, to build that confidence.
Yeah, definitely, I mean, I was fortunate because I was kind of on the upgrade side. So it wasn't so bad as like complete cold calling.
Oh, so they were happy to hear from you then?
Well, I'd say 50-50, but you got the calls, people were happy to hear from you. But it kind of, it just taught me that you needed to earn a wage to play, and I got myself a little banger so I could drive around. Yeah.
Obviously, first taste of, I guess, sports administration at that stage. And I know we're going to kind of not fast track, but move on to trying to get to your current role with Chance to Shine. But in between, you obviously you worked with, was it Volleyball England as well?
Yeah. So actually, it was interesting. So at that time, I was working in the netball. I don't know if you've been to the netball centre in Loughborough. It's brilliant, but there's no really windows. So I was basically in the office at the netball centre, and I was working there. I was playing there, and I was coaching there. So I'd basically, some mornings I'd get there at like 7 a.m. and I wouldn't leave till like 10 o'clock at night, and I hadn't really been outside. So at that point, I thought, something's got to give. And I basically thought the thing that needs to give is the job. So I moved out of sport and I went to work again, a bit randomly, for sort of there's like an alcoholic gift packaging firm, and I was there for a year. But as soon as I got there, I kind of thought, sport is the thing. It was just really missing for me. It was just the fact that actually it was just too much netball.
Yes, it's almost like not burnt up. I know what you mean. It's your passion, but 12-hour days, 16-hour days, exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, totally. And then I went to work for Volleyball England, and I loved it because it was a really great balance for me. It was like another sport. And I originally started looking after their clubs. So I was a national club manager. And then I moved on to looking after children and young people, so regional, and looking after sort of their talent setup and their sort of national program around children and young people and development, which is great. And again, I learned a lot from different sport. And then from there, I went back to work in the Northeast. So at that point, unfortunately, I got injured, so I couldn't play netball anymore. And certainly not to the standard that I wanted to, unfortunately. So I went back to the Northeast and I managed a school sport partnership there, which again, I loved. It was really great. A bit more local, but a bigger team to manage. Working directly with schools, so learned a lot about education. And then I went to work at Lord's Cricket.
So was that back up? That was obviously back in your neck of the woods where you grew up, right? So
yes.
So get a lot of familiar faces and stuff back.
Yeah, definitely. Well, funny enough, I actually had to line manage one of my old teachers when I got the job, which is an interesting dynamic. I can tell you that, one of my secondary school teachers. No, it was. And to be honest, I think, these things are fate, because I kind of looked and I thought, I need to move on from volleyball. I'm ready to leave Loughborough. I can't play netball here anymore, as much as I love Loughborough. I thought, well, I'll have a look. And that job was there in Durham. And I thought, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Yeah, and I guess every athlete's got to go through it, but that kind of injury, was it kind of out of the blue that ended your like elite career at that point, or was it? Did you already been thinking about it or not, or was it just kind of about injury that kind of ended?
Oh yeah, no, it was the injury, unfortunately. long story short, I fractured my kneecap. But it was one of those things where it was no one's fault, but it just didn't get spotted for a long time. So I fractured it, and then I played on for quite some time. And it just got to the point where once it was picked up, that was the issue. I couldn't maintain the level of training that was needed to stay at that standard. So unfortunately, it wasn't a decision I made. It was a decision that my body made.
Yeah, because I'm I guess interested in that. Like that's almost been thrust upon you. Like this is the decision you had to make.
Yeah,
and then netball's been part of your life all that time, like you said, from primary school. Was that difficult to, I guess, overcome that feeling? Or because I'm assuming, not sure about exactly the years, but major champs or Commonwealths around that time. Was there anything that you were working towards? And
well, to be honest, what had happened was, so the injury happened when I was about, oh my goodness, I think it was probably about 2003. I got injured.
Oh, right, okay.
But I played for probably the next 18 months. Trying to manage it because we weren't sure what it was. So from that point, I was in sort of the senior development squad with England netball at that point. But to be honest, I wasn't kind of pushing for Commonwealths at that stage. I would love to have said I would, but realistically, I don't say for myself I was a good netballer, but some of the girls were, amazing. So I think the thing that was hardest for me was all my friends were netball friends, and our best mates were playing in the team with me.
And that environment in Loughborough, like you explained that environment in Loughborough, everything, it was like kind of
they call it the bubble, don't they, right? The bubble. So yeah, exactly. And so you train, you play, you socialise together, and all of a sudden, like 2/3 of that was just gone, and I actually, the harder thing for me was to still socialise with my friends after matches and, after training when I hadn't and couldn't be involved. And actually that was really tricky, and you do just lose and especially because, long story short, I had to have some big operations. So actually I couldn't even really, I became completely inactive quite quickly after the operations, and it took a long time to rehabilitate. So you're not playing netball, you can't really engage in the conversation with your friends. You also can't really do the level of fitness that you're accustomed to as well. So it was quite a big adjustment. It took me like a good few years to kind of, I think, get myself back on track.
Sounds really challenging. I mean, going back up to Durham at that stage, I'm assuming, was that around the kind of in introduction to the PE premium and stuff like that, when you moved into that role? Was it? I was the second school sport partnership manager, and I think they'd been running about 3 years before I joined. So I joined, it's a good question, when did I start? Would have been 2008, around about that time. And it was wonderful. I loved it because it was just all about getting as many children as possible to find a sport that they were passionate about and develop through it. And actually being able to influence schools to try and help that with young people was great. And just the team I worked with were just so enthusiastic, and we'd introduce things like underwater hockey to kids, to pop lacrosse. We had a really good partnership with the university. We did a lot of work with Chance of Shine through Durham Cricket, which was my first introduction to Chance of Shine, actually. And I just saw, I saw firsthand the difference that I knew sport had given me to some young people. And that was really wonderful. And a big part of that was around helping them get into local community clubs, whatever that may be. And it was really wonderful when 2 or 3 years later you'd see them kind of at their clubs, enjoying themselves and thinking we were a small part of their journey. Definitely. I was going to probably good part. I was going to raise, when we talk about Chance of Shine, I was going to raise obviously kind of success stories. I know recently you had was it Lauren Bell, Issy Wong, all the way have come all the way through now, through the Chance to Shine schemes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, it's a really proud moment for the charity. So yes, Lauren Bell and Issy Wong both started their journey in primary school with Chance to Shine. And I think, for us, it's a really interesting challenge for us, because I say challenge is a positive one, because we're not about producing young cricketers. We're absolutely not. This is about getting children to develop their life skills and their well-being through cricket. But we want children to develop their potential, and 1% to 2% of those children that go through our programme will be talented. And therefore they should have the best possible chance that we can give them to progress in cricket. And the fact that Izzy and Laura, Lauren, both made their debuts on the same day at Taunton for England, both taking wickets. And not only are they great athletes, but they're also amazing ambassadors, and they just talk so passionately about how the charity brought cricket into their lives and how effectively cricket, therefore, has helped change their lives, for the better. And, they talk so well about what cricket has given them, and that it makes us feel really proud that we're essentially a small part of, of their journeys.
Yeah, definitely. I know, obviously, it's not a talent ID program, but the kind of byproducts of such impact, like you've got 6 million children, there's going to be some really talented people in there. So yeah, and it's good, obviously, for raising awareness at the highest level. I know you said that was kind of back in Durham, that was your first introduction to the Chance to Shine program. But was it that obviously you saw something in it, and I'm sure you were a big advocate of it at the time. But moving towards your current role, you did kind of made that transition into cricket with work. Was it working with Lords or with
So I left the Schools for Partnership and I came down to London to work for the MCC at Lords Cricket Ground, and I was their first appointment to do effectively community outreach for the club. And it was a really, really, really interesting appointment. I've been fortunate. I love the job there as well. And through that job, I managed the relationship with Chance to Shine. So the club gave some funding to Chance to Shine, and that just gave me another insight kind of at a national level of how the charity operated. I'd seen it at a local level in Durham, and I'd seen the difference that it made to young people. And I think the thing that really stood out for me for the charity, now, I would say this regardless of whether I was sitting in this position or not, is that, it existed to do something really simple, which was effectively help change children's lives through cricket in state schools and disadvantaged communities. And in doing that, the charity had really good scale, impact, and good return on their investment. So for me, that was brilliant.
That's right. Yes, I'm really curious in terms of, obviously you're working at MCC and developing those programs. Well, we always talk about kind of the journey into this current role. So was it that you'd kind of seen the program, obviously I said advocate of it. Was it that you thought one day, I'd love to be working with Chance to Shine? Or was it an opportunity that just came out of the blue and you thought, yeah, I really want to go for that?
So I can't say I sat there sort of when I was working at Lords saying, I must work for Chance to Shine in the future. But I definitely, in terms of the world of sport development, had them really high in terms of regard as a charity. And I always thought, cricket's so lucky as a sport to have a charity like that that's really dedicated to young people on such scale and with such impact. And after I left, I guess I've just always taken opportunities if they present themselves. So when I was at the MCC, I got an opportunity to go on secondment to the Mayor of London's office to look after volunteering there. And I did, and that ended up turning into a full-time job. And I also undertook the sport brief when I was there as well. And again, I was enjoying that. I wasn't looking to leave, but I got a call to say that Chief Exec's job at Chance to Shine was up. And it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, I'd always kick myself if I didn't put myself, in the running for it. And so I didn't think they're thinking, I definitely need to be Chief Exec of Chance to Shine. But at the same time, when someone kind of when that came across my desk, as it were, I was like, well, hang on, I'm always going to wonder what if I have not put myself forward. I just think it's such a wonderful charity. I didn't think I'd get it, but I did. So, pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, and it's probably a good time to give a bit more insight into the program and into Chance to Shine as a charity. I know a lot of our listeners are either probably partners of yours, working on the local level, or definitely will know of the charity. But for those who don't, what's the kind of, if you were going to kind of just outline the offer or kind of the remit, what would that be?
Sure. So, so as you said at the start, we're a national cricket charity. We support young people in state schools and in disadvantaged communities. We're really passionate about inclusion, and one of the things that charity champions since inception is participation for girls. So half our participants are girls. And we work with around 5,000 state schools a year, and we work in 200 disadvantaged communities through our street cricket program. And street cricket really came about because part of the work that we do is we know through all of our research that cricket can help change the lives of young people. And if we take that into schools in an inclusive way, the vast majority of children want to continue playing cricket in the community. And there's big parts of the country where actually that's just not an option for them because there isn't a physical cricket club in their local community. And so we developed Chance to Shine Street as a offer to negate that. So effectively, Chance to Shine Street projects are located in communities where there are no cricket clubs, and they tend, by and large, our focus is in disadvantaged areas. So areas where there's a lack of sports facilities in general. They're free, they're year round, and it's tape ball cricket. So if you haven't seen a tape ball cricket, it's a tennis ball wrapped in electrical tape. I'd say it's quite a skill, but I managed to pull one off quite recently. So I think anyone can do it if they can set their mind to it. And kids can tell it what they want, and the different times depending on what works for the local community. And a third of our coaches are former participants on that program. So there's a big piece that we want to...
With the street cricket, I know obviously previously, or in terms of the format or the infrastructure, obviously local clubs would be going into schools and delivering. With the street cricket, I suppose that's allowed you to scale a lot more, right? So if you can access and get into other communities that you might not necessarily be able to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I guess practically we work is we have a sort of a relatively small team of 21 in the middle at Chancershine, and we work with delivery partners around the country, many of whom are county cricket boards, some are other charities like Street Games, and they employ coaches who then work directly in schools and through the street program. So yes, one of the things we very much look at around is actually if we've got schools in certain areas where there aren't any clubs, then actually can we put a street project there? And how do we then make sure that actually the coaches are going to really understand the local community, the local area, and to help, a lot of this is as much about building confidence in young people that they can, play the game and enjoy it, but confidence to therefore go into that community cricket environment. And actually one of the things we're doing this year, we've been really fortunate that ECB are giving us some funding towards streets. So we're going to be hopefully growing to an extra 100 projects. We need to match fund pound for pound. So every pound we raise, ECB will give us another pound. And that will be taking cricket to even more areas of the country of disadvantage where we know all our data shows there's no activity there at the moment for young people. And sadly, as you probably well know, James, there are areas where there's just relatively high inactivity in young people. You're much less likely to be active in those areas if you're a girl, if you're from a minority ethnic background. So a big part of our work is just to take cricket to those areas to give young people those opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've got fantastic coverage already, but I'm guessing if there's anyone, I'm curious if anyone who's listening now and they maybe, let's say they're either a cricket coach or they run an organisation or they just live in these communities and they think, street or transit, that'd be perfect for my area. How would they go about getting involved? Is it a case of, I don't know, is it like a funding bid or they need to partner with someone, or is it a case of you've got obviously the target areas based on demographic? How's it tend to work?
Yeah, so it's a bit of both, if I'm honest. So people do come to us directly. So, and there's an info@Chancershine email address. You can go on our website and say, I want cricket, click that and send us an email, and it comes directly through to the team. So, we get a lot that way. And we get quite a lot of schools coming to us in that sort of general way. And then with our delivery partners, we very much encourage them to develop local partnerships as well. So I guess to give you an example, in Durham, I'm not just using Durham, come from Durham, which just springs to mind, they developed a partnership with a charity called Young Asian Voices in Sunderland, who effectively had real expertise in terms of community engagement. And that charity, and we supported to train up some of their youth workers as cricket coaches. And we have street sessions that are there now. And so, if people are in a local area, it doesn't have to be directly necessarily straight to Chancershine, but if you do, then we can direct you to the local delivery partner.
Contact on there, yeah.
Exactly, because one of the things we're really conscious of is, yes, we're a national charity and we can collate all this impact and information, but absolutely we are not the local experts about the when, the where, the how, and the who. That is, completely locally driven and decided. We obviously we work very closely with our delivery partners to monitor their plans, and make sure that we think that they're fitting. But it's not for us to say what is the right or wrong thing to do in one area. It's pretty flexible. So yeah, we'd love to hear from more people in the communities that think they've got children that want to play cricket, think they've got space, think they've got enthusiastic coaches. That's brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure the demand, everyone's trying to keep up with demand at the moment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Really, you mentioned funding there a couple of times. I'm kind of interested in that model in terms of, it sounds like ECB are really extremely supportive back of the charity, but how does it tend to work in general? Is it purely kind of grant funding based, or you got kind of revenue generating activities?
Yeah, to be honest, it's a real mix, and I think that's sometimes one of the misperceptions about us. We work really hard fundraising. So, it's not like we start every year and know where the pounds are coming from. We have big question marks at the start of the year to say, actually, where are we going to fundraise from? I think we're not dissimilar to other charities. So, yes, we have grant funding partners. So ECB and Sport England are our biggest funding partners. And we've historically had brilliant funding from ECB around schools. And as I said, they've just started to fund us for street, and Sport England fund us for our current street work.
And have you benefited from that new Sport England approach in terms of like more longer term funding commitments?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because and it's the same with ECB. If the funding that we get from both those partners don't cover the full cost of the program, so we effectively then go out to fundraise on top of that. And actually, if you can say to a grant funder or another trust and foundation, we've got 4 years of funding here that's coming from Sport England or ECB, they know that their funding is actually going to help go that little bit further as well. Yeah. And the same with supporters. So we have individuals that donate to Chance to Shine. And actually, one of the really interesting things, we did some research with our supporters, and it was actually just before the pandemic. But what they said to us is they come because of cricket, but actually they stay because of the impact that we can demonstrate, which is really lovely. And then on top of that, we do fundraising events, as you would imagine, and we look for corporate partners, and we're in the market for corporate partnerships at the moment. So if anyone's out there listening and thinks that we sound like a great prospect, I can promise you we are. So
definitely, for sure. In terms of your, I guess, future aspirations, so I know when we were speaking earlier off the record, I suppose, we're talking about the 100, right, and that impact that could have. And I know that at the time that was scheduled for 2020, I think, for the launch, which was definitely impacted.
Yeah.
How is that impacted now? Like, obviously, it's up and running in a couple of years. Are you seeing a lot more interest, or is it that closely tied with what Chance to Shine do?
So I think for us, the 100 is great in the fact that it's getting more young people interested in cricket, which
it's like that accessible form. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. And there's been a real push around diversifying the audience and getting more children, particularly. And I know that, from the stats that I've seen, that's looking really positive. I think the piece for us that's really interesting, obviously, the 100 have very geographical footprints for the teams. And part of the work that we'll be doing with ECB around street is actually saying, well, there's, where can we put projects that are in and around 100 venues? The data leads us to where the disadvantage is, but effectively there'll be projects that are around the 100 venues, that young people, we can use that as another hook to engage young people, which is really great. And I think for me, anything that gets young people, another avenue for getting young people engaged in sport is absolutely wonderful. And I think, yes, unfortunately, like everything else, the pandemic, the 100 kind of has been put on hold, and then last year wasn't. We didn't have full crowds in the ground. So like this year is the full year where we've had, full season of cricket, great crowds. I've been to the Oval we're based at the Oval here, and there was a sellout crowd the other day, and the atmosphere was just, was amazing. And you think, actually, if part of our job, which it is about inspiring children, then making sure that they can also access that from a spectator perspective is really important.
And in terms of, I guess, vision for the next 3-5 years, etc., is there? I'm sure you've got the plan that you're working on executing, but what would that look like in, let's say, in that kind of timeline? What do you think the charity will look like?
Yeah, sure. So I think the important thing is, I think one of the reasons Chance to Shine has been successful is we've stuck in our lane as such. So for us, it is about cricket, it's about state schools, it's about disadvantaged communities, and although you look at our figures and go 500,000 children, that's a lot. It's 1 in 4 primary schools, and we have a very small footprint in secondary schools. And at the moment, it's 200 street projects. And as I say, we're hoping to grow that to 300. Even that is still, it's not a drop in the ocean. That's something we're really proud of, but we still know that there's more communities out there. So I think part of this for us is actually, we have all the evidence that, our programs can make real impact on young people. How do we continue to try to scale that? And the second part is we have reflected ourselves. And I think, funny enough, sitting here talking about Izzy and Lauren, whilst we're really proud of what we've done there, what we've kind of looked at is actually how can we do a bit more for young people that are talented? And that's not for us to say actually that Chance to Shine is going to start delivering talent programs or not. But what we're going to do is partner better with county cricket boards that have their talent ID programs, partner with the likes of ACE, which we're doing already with Ebony and Chevy, because in our street program in particular, it hasn't traditionally sat inside the talent pathway as such. So actually, you could be a really talented young person in a street session, and you, at the moment, we can't guarantee you will be even spotted in the first place. Yeah. And then the next question is, how are you supported? So the bit that we're really taking on board is actually, first and foremost, how do we make sure every young person in the street gets the opportunity to be spotted and seen? And just because it's tape ball, some of the greats from cricket came from tape ball cricket.
Yeah. That's like the hotbed, you normally find talent out on the streets just playing and who are untapped.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
So how do we help young people be spotted? And then when they are, how do we help to influence the environment to make sure whatever they're going into is supportive, inclusive, as many barriers as possible removed? That, we've learned a lot. We are by no means experts, but we've learned a lot over the years about how to remove barriers.
I was going to say, because I'm thinking about going back to how I was in primary school. My primary school had a really, really kind of strong cricket tradition in primary school. Mm-hmm. The kind of the orange ball, and that was probably down to one teacher. One primary school teacher was like a really driving force behind it. But I guess moving from that style and like street, like you're talking about now, into kind of club cricket, there is barriers in there in terms of equipment and all that type of stuff that you might think from the outside. As a kid, you might think, oh well, I haven't got the pads, the bat, everything. It costs money and all that type of thing. So yeah, if you're working on that, I'm sure that's going to give loads more opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, one of the important things is everything we do is free, because we know cost is a big barrier for young people. 95% of children that come to street tell us it's really important that the sessions are free. So I think where cricket's done really well in the last sort of 5-6 years is there's now a much more inclusive offer if you do live close to a club. So ECB introduced the All Stars program, where actually previously you could do Chance to Shine in your primary school and you could go to a club environment and be very different. Whereas now we work very closely with the ECB. So actually even down to some of the names of the drills and games that the kids have been playing in primary school, they'll hear that same sort of language when they go to the club. It's softball, it's plastic bat when they get there. And, it's very much just around having fun and enjoying yourself, because actually, as I said at the start, that's the main reason we know children come back. And then there's a bit there around actually, when we're working with counties around sort of the talent pathway, understanding what are the main barriers to young people. Like cost is one, but actually location, is another, and the inclusiveness of the environment, is one, and diversity of coaches, and other young people that they meet, are they like them? So actually, there's a piece of work there that we want to undertake, which is, how do we help influence what that pathway looks like for young people, but at the same time being really clear that if they want to stay playing cricket in the street till they're 24, because that's just where we go to, then they can come week in, week out, and we'll be there for them. But if they want to go to a traditional club, or they're already in a traditional club, they can stay there and play, grassroots cricket for the rest of their life if they want to.
Yeah, definitely. I was probably going beyond your remit without a chance to shine, but that kind of that recreational cricket, I'm sure there's something around that, like street, maybe for adults, in terms of big commitment, right? If you're playing on a Saturday for your cricket, you kind of gone all day. So, what was the terminology? Cricket widows and stuff like that they used to say in terms on the weekends. But it seems like a big opportunity there for that kind of as a leisure or recreational activity, that he kind of easy out type activity.
Exactly. And you'd like to think, right now, the fact that the women's game is growing so much that actually it'll be cricket families, exactly. And actually, mum, dad, mum and, other mum, two dads, whatever it is, kids coming along together, you can actually all go and play cricket in the same place, because clubs can cater for everybody. And I think that's there's been a lot of progress in that. There's still quite a long way to go. But, we've seen it from, the Lionesses moving to a different sport, but, how amazingly inspiring it is when you see women playing sport, and for the next generation of girls and boys coming through, that's amazing.
Definitely. I think, as well, looking at the stats, we mentioned them earlier, but for yourselves, with that focus on the 50-50 participation, you've almost got a bit of it's been definitely a head start on other sports, right? Where you've already got the kind of engagement and with Chance to Shine like quite inclusivity. Sorry. So yeah, it seems like this is really strong foundations to build on.
Yeah, definitely. But don't get me wrong, we've still got more work to do because whilst nationally it's 50-50, we know our street projects they tend to attract more boys than girls. So that's one of the things that we're working on. And so I guess one of the things we've done is listen to girls, and we have some girls only sessions for street around the country as well, because for many different reasons, girls feel more confident. Just taking part with the girls feels a bit safer. But nationally, we have parity because we also have a secondary school program that's specifically targeted at girls, because we know, sadly, if you're a teenage girl, you are probably least likely to still do exercise and take part in sport.
Switching gears a little bit, but more around yourself and leading the organisation. Do you have any, have you developed anything, obviously being working in sports administration over this time and with other organisations, have you developed any type of leadership practices or approaches, in terms of how you lead the teams, especially because you've got like the central team, and also all the stakeholders across the country? Have you got any kind of specific approaches to that?
I wouldn't say anything specific, because I think every situation is different. To walk in somewhere and say, well, I'm going to do it this way, would be probably very, very foolhardy. And I think my philosophy always is, it's really important to be as transparent as possible in terms of why you're thinking things and why you're doing them. So one of the things we've got at Chance to Shine is around being sort of data and insight led on our decision making. So effectively, being able to talk to people and say, this is what we're seeing and this is why we're thinking it, and therefore, this is what we're suggesting. And I think in terms of just working with the team and people, it's just really important to me that everyone is treated the same, no matter what job that you do, and actually you understand how important your job is in contributing to the bigger picture, and that you conduct yourself in a way that people want to work with you and they want to partner with you, and you do that in a real way that's human, but also with a bit of humour. I think it's really, one of our values at Chance to Shine is to have fun, and I think, as a team, we try and concentrate on that as much. We're serious about the impact that we have, but, you've got to have some fun and enjoyment, along the way. And I think that's kind of, I guess, the principles I probably would take with me, but I don't think there's kind of a, I'm unfortunate. If anyone does have the sort of golden success nuggets, then please do let me know. But I think it's, I just kind of take every situation as it comes and try.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone's looking for that perfect methodology.
Yeah.
You talk about that, having fun, and obviously most people in the industry, in this sector and industry, got involved because it's passion or because of the impact. But do you have, obviously everyone in every role has stresses, right? So there's certain things that come up and that are super stressful or that need to be dealt with and managed. Do you have any kind of tactics that you use for staying on top form, basically? So do you have anything like that helps you de-stress, or regular routines that you do that helps with that?
Yeah, I think I probably would say, but exercise is really important. So I think, again, other people, but I just basically don't concentrate. If I swim or run, all I do is I can't think of other things. It just really clears my mind. So I think, for me, if I go for a swim or a run, if I've got particularly stressful people, not only do I feel better because I've done some exercise, but it just gives me that time to kind of have a bit of a breather. And I think the other thing that, someone gave me some good advice a long time ago, which is, just this thing on what is in your control and what isn't, and, getting a sense of perspective about things. And, and I'm the worst person because I beat myself up about everything. And, quite often there's things I think, if I had my time again, I would do that better. But, it's a learning curve. But there's also times when you just have to identify, this is completely out of my control. I can't do anything about it. Yes, it's rubbish, but actually, they're the ones where I'll give myself a little bit of time to sulk, but then I'm like, you just got to ditch it because, there's nothing you can do about that. And I think sometimes that really helps me just go, right, that's in the bin. Tomorrow's another day. We'll move on. But the ones where you think, actually, I could have done that better, it's kind of like, well, what are the things and how will I improve on that in the future? And I think, for me, sometimes actually the hardest situations and the things that test you the most and the most helpful, if you were in that situation again, you'd come through it stronger and better because you've been there before and you've taken some things from it.
Yeah, definitely. It's always like that. I don't know who said this, but you've got in the moment when the crisis happened, it's got almost like, what is this here to teach me? Kind of think that approach to take something from it, always lessons learned. reflective question. Last question for me. We always ask everyone the same one. You've been kind of reflecting just then. But if you were going to go back and speak to your younger self, so speak to Laura when she's leaving university or at a certain point embarking on your career, is there one piece of advice, or what would the piece of advice be that if you could just give yourself one piece, go back and talk to yourself?
My biggest piece of advice is don't feel like you have to have the answer straight away. I think when I was younger, especially when I was managing up and I was managing people that were, more senior to me, I felt like I had to have the answer there in the room. Right. And I put too much pressure on myself. And actually, again, some good advice from else is, you do not have to give an answer right there. You do not need to know the answer to everything. Take your time, come back. It might be the same thing you were going to say, but actually just give yourself that time to reflect. So when I was younger, I just was so keen to give responses that actually sometimes I tie myself in knots. And, now I'm a bit more slow if I need to be. Yeah,
no, that's also, it's like, you're there to make the good decisions, right? Not the quick ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Laura, I appreciate your time so much. Thanks for being so transparent with us. Really enjoyed talking to you today.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can write to us at dryphase.podcast@coordinate.cloud, tweet us at coordinatesport, or follow us on Instagram at coordinate_sports, or on my account at James_ventures. This episode was produced by Nancy Kwamboka, with support from Claire Goodchild and Lola Small, with special thanks to Rochelle. I'm James Moore, and you've been listening to The Drive Phase from Coordinate Sport.